Hello there. This is Attorney Mike Steck here today to talk a little bit about some legal considerations for personal trainers when starting a new business. I've got several friends who are either a personal trainer already or who are interested in becoming one and have asked me many times for some just general legal considerations when starting up a personal trainer business. First of all, Clarier Law is my law firm, and I'm a law firm that is dedicated to taking care of small businesses, and particularly startups and also established companies that are looking for legal needs to manage their company well and also improve upon their legal protections. As you might expect with a presentation from an attorney, first of all, this is not legal advice, and I'm not your attorney, and you should also consult an attorney for needs specific to you. This presentation is just offered as a generic scenario for average scenarios, average conditions for your everyday personal trainer. But hopefully the information is still very valuable to you, and let's get going here. First of all, one of the biggest things here when looking at becoming a personal trainer is to consider certification. And also, when you're looking at where to certify, as I just did a search on Google, it seems as though there are lots of organizations out there willing to take your money. But what I would recommend is, I would look for an organization that has a national orientation and that is a well-regarded program that has training standards and also has at least some degree of difficulty to obtaining its certification. And the reason for that is so that you have a standard by which you can base what you do upon, and also that you can point back to if there's ever a concern. Because first of all, one of the concerns for a personal trainer, I would imagine, is that a concern of telling somebody to do something to their body, which that person may not be ready for or able to handle. And so recognizing that one program does not fit all people, I think will be very helpful. Also, considering a continuing education requirement is something that I would look for in an organization where you're required to continually further your development in the profession and also stay up to date. What that does is it forces you to stay up to date with best practices and also to be aware of those standards and to follow those standards. In setting up any business, for that matter, recognizing that your personal certification as a trainer, personal trainer certification, is going to be probably specific to you and not to an entity. Just like with a contractor who builds homes, the license many times is vested in the person who is actually doing the work or overseeing the work. So I imagine that your certification will be with you, but at the same time, it does make sense to have a business entity set up. And what we're trying to do is separate both your personal and your business assets so that should something ever go wrong and somebody were to try to come back and sue you or to say that you did something wrong, that we've got a degree of separation. We're trying to help minimize your personal exposure, somebody coming in trying to take your house if you were to do something wrong or incorrect, or even if there was the appearance of wrongdoing. And so many people will consider a business such as an LLC or a corporation, and this is where legal advice specific to your state and your situation will become very applicable. And if you're going to be a business, you need to act like one. And what I mean by that is you've probably heard about large corporations holding shareholder meetings and other things. The same thing goes for small businesses. And so acting like a business is just as important as being a business. And so it's not enough just to have a business set up. You actually have to manage the company along those lines and maintain your limited liability and also maintain the separation between personal and business assets. Now, some of the protections that are out there and available for you, for example, you've probably signed a liability waiver when you signed up for a new gym. That's also a legal product that's available for you. Something that I would include inside of a services contract where you've got a description of what it is that you're going to be providing to your client, and then also this waiver attached in there that says that they're making certain representations to you, such as they're fit enough to handle the program, they've consulted with their doctor. If you have a female that you're training, that they're not pregnant or they're not aware that they're pregnant, and if they become pregnant, they would let you know so that you're not causing any damage to the baby. And so those types of things and a custom crafted waiver to your business needs will become important and helpful. Also, you will find that there are many organizations that are available, some more reputable than others, that offer insurance specific to personal trainers. And this is also where a legal review could be helpful to look at the insurance policy to make sure that it is adequately covering what you're looking to do with that policy. And in terms of looking at your equipment, and as you look around, there's all different styles and various versions of gyms and gym equipment. One of the best things, if you were to have an accident, for example, while training somebody, one thing that an attorney who was looking to see if there was liability might do is wonder and look at the type of equipment that you were using. Was this stuff that you picked up from a garage sale that was 20 years old and in poor repair, or is this something that is new and reputable or of sound construction that you're training on? Also, equipment that's well maintained. And so while you're looking at these things and you're inspecting it, make sure that you have adequate protections in place. Also, take a look at the equipment before you have your client take a seat or use the equipment to make sure that it appears to be safe to use. Now, another common question, because starting up a business can be very expensive, and one of the keys to business success is to try and minimize your overhead. And so many people will consider doing training at their own home. This is a common question that I've had with people in discussion, is that, hey, I'd like to do training, I'd like to run this out of my home. Well, if you go back a few slides, you'll remember that we talked about trying to minimize your liability and minimize your exposure to your personal assets, and having a gym at your home could be a scenario where you're incurring some extra liability there. There are things that we can do legally to try to help minimize that and to add some protections there. But I would be very careful and make sure it's well protected, and just having the savings up front may not be worth the long-term cost should you have something go bad. Many people talk about also working at trainings in someone's home. While this is probably a common scenario where a personal trainer is asked, I would be very careful, because you don't have any control over the actual equipment that you're using, and also the location, the placement, and there's a certain flow that a gym has that makes things safe, and spacing and all of those things that I would want to be very careful of if I were working in someone's home. And also, there are many gyms that are already established that could help you with running your training business there. You could potentially lease space and find those types of gyms that are specific to trainers, or allow trainers to come in and work there. Now, with that certification, there are certain agreements that you're likely to encounter and sign, and many people don't give much forethought to these agreements. But just like a trainer would say to me, if I were coming to them for training, they would take an assessment and say, where are you now? And they would customize a program to what I was trying to do. The same thing goes with agreements that you're signing. Recognize that it's a really common practice when partnering with a gym or some other established organization that they might try to have you sign on as an independent contractor, so that they don't have to pay on their payroll taxes for your work that you're doing with them. And there's a fine line between being an employee and an independent contractor, and that liability really rests with the employer rather than with you. But it is very helpful to make sure that you're running a reputable business, that you're aware that an employee is generally a person who is provided equipment, provided a place to work. In fact, I recently had an independent contractor scenario where a trainer came to me and said, well, we're doing all of this work at the gym, and the gym wants us to be on as independent contractors. But as I talked with this person, it became very clear that this scenario was not one of independent contractor, but was very much an employee-employer relationship. And that exposes the employer to a great deal of liability, both state and federal consequences there. And it also adds protections in for the employer to have this person on as an employee, even though there's an added cost. It adds protection should that employee get hurt on the job, whereas if someone's an independent contractor, they could come back and potentially sue personally or sue the business rather than going through something like workers' comp. So it is important to have those things set up correctly with employers and employees. Other internal agreements that you may use, you may have a waiver and a service contract that I mentioned previously that you would sign with your clients. One of the recommendations here, and I know that there are many personal trainers who talk about diet because diet is an integral part of someone's health, and developing greater strength and fitness and looking at diet is a very important part. But one of the possible concerns here is that your certification may not extend to giving dietitian type of advice, and that's why there are dietitians who come in and who are certified and give actual specific diet advice. And so one thing that you may be able to do is to say, here are some programs that I have found to be helpful, and give more than one recommendation rather than saying this is the one and only save your life. You'll lose 50 pounds on this diet guaranteed, because now you become responsible for what that person does, and potentially and also any consequences that happen with them. Also be careful of recommending supplements to somebody, just as I'm careful in not giving legal advice in this scenario specific to you. There are many different supplements, and there's a lot of legislation that does and does not affect supplements in the United States. And so you want to be careful, because there may be a supplement that's out there that you're recommending, and the company may not have adequate quality control and add 3 times the amount of caffeine that is recommended in daily dose, and cause this person great harm. Also be careful of what we call protected health information. Many times I imagine that you will come into a scenario where people talk about their health concerns, and be careful about diagnosing or trying to offer medical advice, because unless you're certified as a doctor or a nurse or somebody who can offer medical advice to that person's situation, be careful about the protected health information, and also avoiding you don't want to become a medical provider by showing concern and listening and trying to answer whatever. It doesn't mean you can't be empathetic, but just be careful about the diet and supplementation, and also the health information. And coincidentally, in preparation for this video, as I looked at many of the cases where personal trainers have gotten into trouble, many of those cases have been where somebody didn't follow their own national standards. They departed from that. That's what we call a departure from the standard of care, which is a part of negligence and a claim that somebody can make in tort or in a civil case, but also in somebody giving diet or supplementation recommendations to somebody that was not in line with what that person's health concerns were. So I don't want to scare you on these things, just to raise the issues. What I would recommend is something of a scenario where you might offer several recommendations and say, many of my clients have enjoyed supplements from company A, B, and C, and let that person decide with their own judgment, and say some of my clients have enjoyed this diet or that diet, and offer some choices rather than saying this is the diet for you. Rather be a little more generic and say many people have found success with these things. So just a few considerations there and some things to be aware of. Again, just to kind of walk through this, get yourself set up, build a solid foundation, just like you would tell somebody in their training. Build a solid foundation in the development of your program, and also set up the correct structure. Be aware, do the right agreements, and recognize that a little bit of prevention and having adequate protections up front goes a long way on the back end in avoiding possible legal claims against your business, because you're in the business of helping people. You don't want to be in the business of trying to solve legal problems, and it becomes very expensive down the road, and will be very hurtful to your business. So anyway, hope you enjoyed this little presentation. If you're considering a personal trainer business, and just some general considerations, some things to think through as I've thought about what I might recommend to somebody starting up a business. Thanks for watching, and hope you have a great day.